Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner in a new setting. Look at that backdrop for Joey Wagner. That's different, buddy. What's going on there?
Well, we finally got moved, and we are in the final. There's like 4 or 5 more totes left to unpack, and otherwise we are finally settled in. Got the new backdrop set up so that one guy on YouTube can quit telling me how terrible my backdrop was for years and years and years, and frankly it was, so I can't really fault him too much, but we're settled in. I appreciate the time mostly away. Moving is a lot. Even though you think you are planned as well as you can possibly be, you never are, and that sucks in those final 48 hours. That is not fun, but it went pretty smooth. Happy to be back on the pod, back working again for not really doing a ton for a couple weeks.
That's all right, though, because, moving sucks. Like, anybody that's moved, and I've moved a lot early in my life, moved my wife around the state of Illinois very many times, Joey, but once you're in, it feels a little different, right? You're starting to make it a home a little bit. Your cup of coffee in your office, starting a pod. Feels a little different. How you feeling?
It does feel different. It feels really good. It truly feels really good. I finally got the house came with blink cams. So I finally got those set up the other day, and now I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Like I can see the birds. Now I just watch those sometimes. It's honestly, it's not that exciting for me. It's exciting to be here, but I very much have leaned into I'm gonna watch the birds a little bit, or squirrels. I enjoy watching squirrels either on the camera or out the window. So yeah, man, things are pretty busy here.
I feel like since you've joined Illini Inquirer, you have aged to 40 years. Just the domestication, yeah. the watching animals, and watching birds is a big moment for you because you are not a fan of birds.
No, but the window is really key to have some separation. I think I don't like birds. The geese are really where my issues.
Don't get within 5 feet of a goose and Joey. It's not a good look for Joey.
I will say you'll get a kick out of this. I'd had my window down as I was moving stuff, and I got in, and a bird had just pooped all over the inside of my front, my driver's side door and my back seat. And I thought, man, this is really fitting for how much I make a big deal out of these things. Yeah, they know. They can smell the fear.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do a football mailbag today with Joey. We did the mailbag with Kyle yesterday, basketball. I don't expect to go 100 minutes on this one. There were more questions for basketball than football, which I understand because basketball is at a different tier than football, but things have been pretty good for football under the Brett Bielema era as well, but not a ton going on, as you said, Joey, except for recruiting. Prep official visits continue to get set up. Illinois has some momentum. We talked with Ryan Easterling about the in-state prospects, getting some out-of-state prospects here on campus over the next month as well. Also still working to add to the 2026 roster. They added JUCO defensive lineman Joshua Davis. They're hosting Ian Rea, a D2 edge rusher from Emory. And what was the other name?
It's a C, right?
Yeah. But he's a Division II All-American, 12 sacks last year. He's had a very productive career at the Division II level. He visited Vanderbilt and LSU already. He's got offers from those programs. So the SEC and Big Ten in on him, and really interesting prospect, Joey. He's got real quick twitch athleticism. He was a dominant athlete at that level. I think he's probably a fit as a jack linebacker, kind of that hybrid edge linebacker who could be versatile, like a Daniel Brown, Mason Moragan, Will Holmes type of player, but can disrupt. And we know this defense prioritizes that. Illinois also looking at JUCO defensive lineman Deion Williams as well, and they're in pretty heavily on him. Not a surprise here, Joey, with about 4 or 5 scholarships Brett Bielema told me at the NFL draft. They're trying to add as much depth and competition as possible on the defensive front. I know fans have been concerned about that. I don't know if any of these names are guys that are going to be stars for you next year, but guys who can compete for reps, especially if they're able to get a guy like Rea, who's got offers from LSU and Vandy. I would imagine he could find his way into the rotation, but the JUCO guys as well could be better long-term fits is guys who, you don't have to go into the portal and spend a ton of money next year, and you can develop in your system. So just some interesting late moves Illinois is trying to make on the defensive front here.
Yeah, Emory and Henry is where Rhea plays. But yeah, I'm with you on the Jack linebacker spot for him. And you and I are just real quick to talk about linebackers because no one asked about it in the mailbag. We don't have a great expectation for what and how these linebackers are going to be deployed. The way I think about it is Jack can be all linebackers, but I don't know that all linebackers can be a Jack in this system. That makes sense to me, having seen nothing other than some stretching and punt during spring practices. So that might not be correct ultimately, but that's kind of how I'm framing it in my brain. Like you could theoretically see Daniel Brown at one of those other two spots, but I don't know that you would see James Kreutz at Jack. It is kind of the way I'm trying. Go ahead.
I just think of them as the tweener position. And I think the chief, they're calling it in this defense, the boundary safety / linebacker, that's the Matthew Bailey type, another tweener type of player. I think that's the way you kind of think of that position where, that guy can be used as an edge rusher, stand-up guy, but he also can drop into coverage. So I think it's a lot like some of the outside linebackers they've had at that Fox position in recent years, only they're going to drop into coverage more. They're going to be more built a little bit more like linebackers than defensive ends, and they'll probably drop into coverage a lot more because you're going to send your middle linebacker, who could be Daniel Brown, right, who could play multiple positions there, or James Kreutz, or you could send your strong safety, Matthew Bailey, on a blitz. Like, a lot of these things with this defense, I don't think we can assume, but just the personnel they have at the Jack linebacker position, Ian Rhea fits that because he's like Brown, Morgan, Will Holmes, these guys who are kind of 3-4 edge rushers, but also have the versatility to drop back and cover a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I didn't mean to get too far in the weeds on that, but we're trying to figure this out in real time a little bit. And as far as the JUCO additions on the defensive line, yeah, I don't know what reasonable expectations you would have for those guys this year. I mean, you miss spring, which is a big deal as you're trying to get acclimated to the weight program and the defense. But to your point, yeah, I think beyond this year, those guys could be, to a year in the system, kind of know that the traits are there, right? Joshua Davis is raw, but he's long. He's got those traits that you want in a defensive lineman. So if you have concerns about the defensive line, I get it. I do too. I don't know that these guys address those concerns immediately in 2026.
I don't think they're game changers for 2026, right? But their depth, their competition, which they need.
Yeah, and you absolutely need those things. So, but 2027, 2028, I think there's a possibility there where those guys could have an impact. So until then, I mean, I do feel like the defensive line kind of is where it is at this moment, just in terms of who we think is going to be in the rotation. Maybe one of these guys surprises. I don't know that I would go into training camp with that expectation of these guys, though.
Yeah, because both these JUCO guys are young. I believe they're just 1 year into college, right? And they haven't been here for spring ball. So I don't know if I'm going to expect that guy to come in and be a starter right away for you. Maybe get some snaps, maybe finds a way to get in the rotation. I don't know if it's like, hey, this is the answer that every fan is looking for out there. But it does show that this staff knows it needs more on the defensive front, both now and in the future. And that's the way I kind of think of those JUCO guys is you're losing 3-4 seniors on that defensive front, even after this year, even though it has some questions, like Daryl Prater, Carter Janke are both gone after this year. So you have some holes to fill. And you can find that internally, Joey. It's better than going on the market and having to spend top dollar, which obviously Illinois didn't have a lot to do this year to keep even their own guys from hitting the market and going to get top dollar.
Yeah, that's right. And top dollar. Now, I do think Illinois is going to have to get into the transfer market next offseason, but it's what do you need? How heavily do you have to invest? Where else do you have to invest? Some of that answer might be, do you have to invest in a quarterback, right? Like this just is a domino effect for how much you have to invest where. But we know that, you start looking around on kind of what the free agency market is. It's quarterbacks, it's tackles, and defensive linemen. Like it's those guys get paid. Edge rushers are in that conversation. Those guys command top dollar. So you'd like to try to mitigate how much of those dollars you have to spend next offseason. And the hope is these JUCO guys can at least address some of that depth. We're not saying they're going to be stars in 2027, but there's a fewer bodies you have to add in that, I think, in the offseason at the defensive line position is important.
Yeah, if you don't have to go get 5 or 6 defensive linemen again, right? Like they did this year after losing several of them. All right. The other big topic going around college football right now is the Big Ten's push for a 24-team playoff. I'm going to try and get Scott Docterman from The Athletic on because he was out in California as part of these AFCA conference meetings, the Big Ten conference meeting. So we'll discuss that at a different date. But that is going on right now. And Brett Bielema is a big voice pushing for 24 teams. And while money has something to do with this, because the Big Ten wants college football playoff games on Fox, which they currently aren't. That is a big part of this. I also think it makes sense for teams like Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska to want a 24-team playoff. Whether that's the best thing for the fans, I don't know. But I really haven't made my decision on whether I really support this, but I get why Brett Bielema really supports this, Joey.
Yeah, if you're in that tier, that you're Illinois, you're Iowa, you're Minnesota, you're who am I missing? Washington, USC. Like if you're in that tier, yeah, you would surely like another door to walk through in the college football playoff. I don't know that I really am upset about go to 24. It'll be 12 awesome games. Right. I mean, you're just adding more really, really fun games.
Replacing the bowl games, right? Like the bowl games are pretty much, I mean, they're not meaningless because people still watch them. People still go to them. It's meaningful for programs like Illinois, but more meaningful would be a college football playoff game in Champaign.
Yeah. And you would have to reframe what a bowl win means a little bit if this goes to 24. I mean, some of those, those lower tier bowls, you already probably have to question that a little bit, but if you go to 24, I don't know that you can sell if you're some programs around the country as loudly as maybe you have been like, oh, back-to-back bowl win. Well, the 24 best teams are out of the conversation. So that would be probably a cost of this. I still think people would watch. I still think people would go. I don't know that they would turn out in the packs that you see at some of these, like the Citrus Bowl had a really good turnout. The Music City Bowl had a really good turnout. Those will probably still turn out, I would say, fairly well, but below that, and we're not talking like those December 20th bowl games at noon on a Wednesday. Like those are obviously going to struggle for turnout one way or the other. Some of those higher tier, yeah, that's probably right. But we're talking about some of those higher tier bowl games, and those would be.
We lost Joey there for a second. All right, we got football mailbag. We got about 15 to 20 questions that we will go through here. We appreciate everybody for sending these in. Some really good questions that we'll get into, breaking down next year's team, breaking down a little bit more than football as well. There was a basketball question or two I didn't get to yesterday with Kyle Toss that we will break into as well. So we will get to all of those, some really good questions that were sent in here. Joey, you back with us?
Yeah, don't cut that out so everyone can watch how stupid I look trying to plug the microphone.
Cut it out. But I think it's good for your brand to not cut it out.
That's an absolute joke, but I'm so glad it's in there.
All right, let's start with the defensive front, okay? Mike sent this in. We all have the same concerns with the defensive line. However, do you think the switch to the 3-3-5 is a testament to the confidence Brett Bielema has in his offense? The new scheme seems like a potential nightmare for teams that have to drop back and throw the ball to stay in games. So, like we've heard from Brett Bielema about why he's making this switch. Do you think, as Mike suggests, this is a testament to the confidence Brett has in his offense that basically other teams are going to have to pass to beat them?
No, I don't think this has anything to do with the Illinois offense. I think this has everything to do with knowing where you need to find advantages on the football field and however that looks. And look, maybe this won't ultimately be an advantage, but Brett Bielema's hope is that the difficulty to prepare for this defense, your ability to maximize some tweeners, I'm assuming, I guess this is what his hope would be with going to this defense, with being more aggressive, that ultimately gives you an advantage. And I don't think it's going to be an advantage all the time because I think you're going to struggle against the run. I think you're going to give up more big plays as a defense, and Illinois has given up in the past few years. But are you doing enough? Are you creating enough disruption? Are you creating enough advantages in other ways that makes those, maybe some struggles against the run or some big plays? Can you still kind of come out even or a little bit ahead defensively just because of what you're going to do in theory for what this is? So no, I don't think this has anything to do with the Illinois offense. I think this has everything to do with going left while a lot of other teams are going right defensively and trying to be different, trying to be a difficult prep. And we'll see. We'll see if that works. I think it's going to work at times, but I think there's going to be some inconsistency with it too.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Like, I think this is more just about your defense was stale, number one. You had to change. And Brett Bielema felt that your defense was too similar to all these other defenses. So you are taking a left turn and doing something that's very different, especially on the defensive front. That does leave some concerns about that you hit on. Like, how do you do against the run? Do you have the talent up front to run what you want? But the whole point of this is that maybe you don't need the Ohio State defensive line to be successful and be disruptive running this defense. What you do have to do is you have to have really good coaching, the fundamentals, and you have to tackle incredibly well in this defense because you are very aggressive, which I love. I'm on record. I love that they're going to a more aggressive defense, but that does leave open some issues that you can give up big plays. But I would think, if you always want your defense and offense to complement each other, right? Complementary football is something Brett Bielema always talks about. The defense hasn't done enough of that here the last several years. Like 2024, the defense did a pretty solid job of that, but 23 and 25, it certainly did not, where the offense had to bail you out of games a lot of the times. And kudos to Barry Lunny and Luke Altmaier and everybody that they were good enough to do that. You want your defense to be able to win you some more games. And that includes just bigger plays, more negative plays, Joey. And I think you're going to get that with this defensive scheme and just the aggression of it. But you're also going to give up some plays that don't complement your offense. Like if you give up big touchdown runs, that's not going to give your offense a break and going to put some pressure on them to score some points. So, yeah, it's fascinating. It is the story of the year. Is this defense and how Bobby Hauck impacts the program really over the next couple of years. This is the biggest story, is how this defense works. They had to pivot to something. We'll see if this is the right pivot.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be really interesting to see how, just as we consume what this defense is, both in the media or as fans consume it, or as Brett Bielema and the coaching staff, how you kind of reckon with what I think are going to be more disruptive plays. I think you're going to see more sacks. I think you're going to see more TFLs. Ideally, you'd like to see more interceptions. They didn't take the ball away nearly enough.
Ideally, you would fix the biggest issue, which is third down defense. Giving up third down conversions. Now, first and second down, Brett Bielema would say has something to do with that. But these third and longs, like that has to be fixed, Joey. Like they got to stop giving up so consistently these third and longs. And I think with a little bit more aggression, you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, so I think all those things are going to be exciting, but I also can see big plays happening, right? And those are going to be frustrating for Brett Bielema, for fan. I can see struggles against the run. So it's just going to be interesting to kind of watch the ebbs and flows of that, because I think it's fair to think that those are going to happen. With every defense is going to have ebbs and flows, but when you're going in such a direction that Illinois is going, how all of that plays out and how those all marry one another. The good news is, and I think this was overall the point, I do think your offense is going to be good enough to withstand some of those growing pains, to withstand some of those big plays, potential struggles against the run. I do believe in Katin Hauser and what the weapons they have offensively. The offensive line is a question mark, I don't think in talent, just in terms of gelling, of cohesion, of adjusting to the Big Ten. But that helps. You're not going into this with an offense that's, we don't think, going to struggle. So you'll be able to, kind of go in an ideal world, point for point to some degree with some teams, but ultimately you need to get some stops and you need to make some more negative plays, be more disruptive on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, let's go to David's question. He says, what should expectations be for Illinois football moving forward? Can Bielema push this to another level? What do you think, Joey?
I'd say about where it is. Like if your expectation is in that 7 to 10 win range, where 7 is quote unquote a retooling or a rebuilding, and 10 is, hey, especially if this thing goes to 24 teams, it's a playoff team. I think that's kind of where Illinois exists right now. Can you beat Iowa? That's really.
You know what I wrote? Iowa. That's what I wrote, because since in the last decade, Joey, Iowa is number 15 in the country in wins, in the entire country. And there's programs like they're right behind Penn State. Like it's not that far behind Penn State, but like Penn State's aura, it seems to be way higher. Listen, getting to Michigan, Ohio State, I think it's really hard to do that. And I just don't think Illinois has the resources to do that right now. They have good resources. They do not have the elite of the elite resources. They don't have a super donor like Phil Knight level, right? That is putting that kind of money into the program. So I don't know if they're ever going to have the best, get the 5-star talent here and there and there. So you're going to have to win with scheme, with coaching, with development. But you have resources that you can get enough good players that you can consistently win. Like, I feel like every time we bring this up, it's like, I was not good enough for what we want to be. I think that's crazy. I think Iowa is exactly what Illinois can aspire to be and can accomplish, and seems like it's not too far away from getting there, Joey. And if the college football playoff were 16 teams or 24 teams over the last decade, Iowa would have been in there 6 or 7 times. You're telling me that's not good enough? Like, and you could make a run to get to the quarterfinal or a semifinal in like your best years? That's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun as a program. Every time I go to Iowa City and I see that atmosphere, I'm like, this is cool. Like this, every game you go into, you think you have a chance to win. They pull off some fun upsets. They get players to the NFL. I don't think that's like selling short. Like, I don't think like that is something you shouldn't be proud of and shouldn't aspire to be. A program like Utah that is developed into this 8 to 9 wins, 10 wins every year. That's a lot of fun as a football fan to do that and to have a chance, especially if the college football playoff continues to expand. You're going to be in playoffs, on the decent regular there, Joey, every couple of years if you're that kind of program.
Yeah, I'm with you. The thing I think Iowa, where it has like maybe a notch above Illinois right now, I just think their floor is a little higher.
Yeah.
Because Kirk Ferentz has been there forever. Like if Illinois won 6 or 7 games this year, which is I think very reasonable and in that range, like I don't think it'll be 9. I think 6 or 7 is more likely than 9 for Illinois. Like Iowa hasn't, like the outside of the COVID year, they have won at least 8 games every year since 2014. Like that's just and it's a marginal difference, right? You're talking 1 game, but it's just a little bit higher floor.
8.6 wins per year over the last decade, right? Like that's hard to do. And like that's your floor. Yeah, I don't know if that's Illinois' floor yet, because let's be honest, Iowa gets 4-star talent on the offensive, defensive line, gets some defensive backs, but they've established themselves enough to do that. Like I think Illinois, if they continue to do what they're doing, like you're going to get some of that 4-star talent. You're going to get some of that, identity that you had. And the good thing is, at least for now, and you hope it continues, potentially post Barry Lunny, if you have to do that, is your offense gives you a higher ceiling than what Iowa has been. It's just Iowa has Phil Parker on defense, and you're trying to find your Phil Parker right now in Bobby Hauck that runs a scheme that teams struggle with every week. So that's what Illinois is hoping to do. That's what Brett Bielema was trying to do with Bobby Hauck here. But the offensive side of the ball gives you a ceiling, but that Iowa offensive line and that defensive system have given them an amazingly high floor.
It's funny how geography probably impacts this conversation, because some people are going to be listening to this and be like, are you kidding? Exactly what you said. Like, be better than Iowa, strive higher than Iowa. If you go to like,
of course, yeah,
but I'm saying if you go to any like non-Big Ten or definitely like this heart of the Midwest is kind of, old Big Ten West setting. Like if you go and tell Arizona say, hey, you can be Iowa. I think because there's not that animosity and that built-in back and forth, and like you don't have, I think a lot of schools around would be like, yeah, I'll take that all day long.
I think a lot has to do with Iowa's offense too. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
It's not that fun to watch, but what's fun is winning. I'd rather win, but I get that can top your ceiling up. What I'm saying is like Illinois' offense, I think has shown they can have a higher ceiling, but listen, yeah, of course you'd love to get to Penn State's level at some point. Right. But I guess my reaction to this is like the stuff coming out of Nebraska, the media the last couple of days of like saying that Minnesota and Illinois or Iowa aren't good enough. They need to strive to be better. I'm like, how about you get to Minnesota and Illinois first? Like, you guys have been a terrible program. I got a subpar Big Ten program. I know they won national titles previously. It's been a long time. It's been like Indiana basketball. you need to build back to just Illinois and Minnesota's level, let alone Iowa's level, before you can start talking about national championships. It's really hard to win those. And I just don't think you should just poo-poo like, yeah, if you're not a top 10 team in college football, what are you doing? I don't know. It's been a lot of fun to cover Illinois football the last couple of years, Joey, in some big games. Like, I don't think we should overlook like how fun that can be to be a program that's, right there on the precipice of getting to a college football playoff now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because Minnesota and Illinois in particular right now are kind of in that, like, like the meme where the guy's like, me? Like when people are like, you don't want to be Minnesota or Illinois. Like, I don't feel like those two programs are getting enough like respect or attention for what they've done, especially in this last 8 years. Illinois a little shorter than that. Obviously, like those are tough places to go win at the rate that Illinois has been winning, and then with what PJ has done at Minnesota. So like, it's just those two schools I feel like are very similarly placed. And hold on, why are you bringing it up for us? We're doing a pretty good job here. Like things are good in Minneapolis, and they're not perfect. No program is gonna no one's ever winning enough for a fan base, right? I mean, maybe 2 or 3 programs are, but those two programs,
Iowa gets sick of winning 8 games, right? Penn State gets sick of winning 10 games. Everyone wants to take that next step. I get that. So now Illinois fans, you want to get to that top 10, you want to do that. It's really hard to do. And given your history, I think, Iowa and Wisconsin before were kind of the examples of what you can be. And I don't think striving for that is a bad thing. And Illinois still has to establish itself as that, right? Like they're starting to do things where the last couple of years they've been better as a program than USC overall, right? But like now you have to stay there. And that's why Iowa's so impressive is they've stayed there for 2 decades under Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah, it's really that run they've been on. And I still want to throw PJ. I know PJ is probably not a coach favorite for a lot of listeners of this pod, but what he's done at Minnesota is incredible. It's incredible the way he's got the consistency of Minnesota football right now. And, you got to want, like, if he were to ever leave there, what that looks like for the next, because he's a really good football coach and he's winning a lot of games at a place that it's difficult to win games at.
Memorial Day is the unofficial start of summer. So how do you kick off the summer season? Sprucing up the backyard, cleaning up the grill, planning quality time in the sunshine. Does summer begin for you once you hear the roar of the grill lighting up for the first time? If so, it's time to bust out the tongs and enjoy USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, and more from Omaha Steaks. The Omaha Steaks Memorial Day sale is going on right now, and you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, you get an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. But I love Omaha Steaks. They sent me their Burger Perfection Pack here recently. Been grilling up some of their great burgers. I love the sirloin burgers, which not only are really delicious, but also pretty good for you. High in protein, a little lower in the calories. But check out their Burger Perfection Pack for $79.99. But all Omaha Steaks products are great. Some of the tenderest steaks you'll have, but also fish, chicken, pork chops. It's all at omahasteaks.com. And right now, get 50% off site-wide during their Memorial Day sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Illini at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com with promo code Illini at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's right. All right, let's go to some more that could be a little quicker here. Humboldt Jimbo. Is this the year that Joe Barna earns his sign? He's been the sign guy for Joey. I think he's earned that. I mean, his freshman year was pretty dang good. Showed some flashes again last year as a rotational player. But is this the breakout sign guy for Joe Barna? Don't tell me we lost the sign in the move.
No, we'll find it. I don't have it now, no. Illinois needs it to be. Yes. Illinois is, I think, really, really needs Joe Barna. You're right. I think he's earned the sign just fine the last couple of years.
Is it underclassman? Yes. Yeah. Like he's been
but I think Illinois needs him to really take a step forward this season, not in so much as because of him, but because of what's around him on the defensive line. They need someone to step into that number one best defensive lineman role. Maybe that's Carter Jenke, and we're kind of overlooking that a little bit, but I think there's a lot on the shoulders of Joe Barna in this defense, having missed spring ball to come in and and be a really good player for Illinois. So yeah, they need it.
Yeah, everything you said is correct. And the good thing is we saw a great flash of it against Tennessee. And that's a pretty good offense he went against, and he was a game wrecker. And that's what you need. You have no proven game wreckers. Joe Barnes wrecked one game that we know of so far against a really high-quality opponent. So that was a good sign. I think there's a lot of confidence in what he can do. So, yeah, I don't have much to add. I think he's going to be a good player. But they do need him to take that step as a breakout. I don't want to say definitely all Big Ten caliber player, but this needs to be probably their sack leader on the team, like 6+ sacks from Joe Barna. Yeah, that should be, I think, an expectation. I think that would be his expectation going into this year.
Yeah, they need him to be the most disruptive guy on that defensive front, whatever that looks like, but in a way that he can keep offenses off balance and really kind of lean into what this defense is. I think Joe Barnes got a lot to do with that.
All right, Benjamin, expectations for year one at tight end for Caden Fagan. I like how we said year one because there's probably going to be a year two as long as this 5 for 5 does pass for Caden Fagan, which I think is massive for him. Caden's already talked about he'd like to apply for a waiver for a 5th year. He might not need that if 5 for 5 passes, but it'd be big to get 2 years. But year one, Joey, what would be your expectations for a proven playmaker, but at a new position?
I don't know if I have a number, but in check. That's kind of my crusade this summer. It's like, can we not put a lot of expectation on a guy who is learning a new position, who has been a running back his entire, like, it's not like he was even I don't know that he played any tight end at Arthur Lovington Atwood Hammond. He was running back and quarterback. So like, I get why the expectations are there because there's just opportunity. Like, he's going to be in this rotation. There's just too much of a gap in the tight end room for him to not be a big, hand in that. I don't want to come in and say Caden Fagan's going to have 20 receptions or 15 receptions for 300 yards or whatever that is. That's not fair to him. If he far exceeds those, like maybe he Hank Beatty's this from what we talked about Hank last training camp. But I don't think it's fair to put all of that on someone who's learning a new position for the first time. I think he was in and out of spring practices a little bit. Like that's just not setting up for reality to think that he's going to be that guy year one.
Yeah, and I'm just fascinated by how Barry Loney Jr. is going to use him, right? Like this is a fun piece, but I got a lot of questions about how it's used, how he blocks, all of that. The median answer here would be 20 to 30 catches. Like, is that ridiculous to think that's 2 catches a game if he stays healthy? I think they're going to want to try and force feed him once or twice a game, right? And then maybe one
early on.
Yeah, and then one drop down pass a game where Caden Howard's like, yeah, that read's not open. All right, Caden's in the flat. That's kind of, I see a lot of that. I see like definitely 1 or 2 plays a game where they're going to try and force feed them. Then, potentially 1 or 2 more happen just with progressions. But yeah, I think 25 catches is a fair, that'd be a baseline of what I think he can do and be dangerous as a weapon. Because what I love about this, Joey, is it allows you to put Caden Fagan on the field with Aiden Lawfree or Khalil Valentine. Right? Those are 2 of your best playmakers. And last year you weren't able to have them on the field a lot together because you didn't run a lot of 21 personnel. Now it's basically like that. You have 21 personnel with Caden Fagan just lined up as an H-back or whatever it is, and you get more playmakers on the field. But to get a lot of snaps, he's going to have to prove himself as a blocker.
20 to 25 catches feels like a lot to me. Like, I'm going back through it.
Tight ends, it's just he's different, right? Like I think they're going to force feed him a little bit more than they did other tight ends. That would be the leading tight end receiver of the Brett Bielema era by receptions.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Barker had 18, and he was, frankly, a more proven tight end. He didn't block in a way that you've seen Illinois tight ends block under Brett Bielema, but 2025 feels kind of heavy to me. Maybe I'm on the wrong side of this. Maybe I'm the one who's really hitting the brakes a little too hard, and I'll wear that just because I have to see it a little bit more.
I agree with you. I think some people are envisioning like 500 yards, all Big Ten tight ends. Like, listen, what was it? Lake McCree of USC had like 400 yards last year as a receiver. I think it's going to be a bunch of 5 and 6 yard catches for Caden Fagan. It's just going to be in the flat, just little drop offs. But 200 yards, something like that would be around my expectation. I'm not saying like 25 catches for 400 yards here for him.
Yeah. 200 yards. I could see him somewhere in that 15 to 18 range for receptions. Maybe you're right. Maybe they force feed him early, especially some of those in the flat, and let him get out in space, because Caden Fagan in space is a problem. Yeah. Like he's shown that it really is a pass catcher. Some of his best moments as a college football player. So I might be too far kind of tampering down expectations. That's just such a big change, man. And we'll see how it plays out. He's going to be in the rotation. That is the biggest expectation I can put on him, because the rotation is open for him.
He'll be a top 3 guy in that rotation, whether that's 200 snaps or 400 snaps is the biggest question for me, and it probably has a lot to do with his blocking. All right, Tony asked, do you think that the targets and catches will be more evenly divided in 2026? Is there a world where Dixon, Clement, and Perry each grab 40 catches? I would throw Jayshon Platt into that as well. I'd say Platt probably more likely to get 40 than Perry. If you look at 2025, Joey, Beatty, 70 catches, 864 yards, Dixon, 35 for 548, Hudson Clement, 36 for 454. Obviously, Beatty was the go-to guy. But if you separate this first half of the season and second half of the season, I think it's pretty stark. Beatty, first 6 games, 32 catches, 568 yards. Dixon, 18 catches, 311 yards. Clement, 13 catches, 136. So 568, 311, 136. Last 7 games, Beatty had 38 receptions, but just 295 yards. Dixon, 17 for 237. Clement, 23 for 318. So over the last 7 games, Hudson Clement was the leading receiver by yards at 318, Beatty at 295, Dixon 237. So my whole point is, I think they were heading this way last year anyway. It just Beatty had some monster games early in the season. Yes, I think this is going to be a way more evenly distributed group where you could have 3 guys over 500 yards. And like we said, I think Fagan, I think Perry, those guys could be involved for 20 to 30 catches as well. I think that's what's going to be a strength of this offense, is that maybe you don't have a go-to guy. Yet I say that, Joey, in the last couple of years, what have we had? We've had Beatty and Bryant turn into go-to guys. So a quarterback always seems to find his guy, and I wonder if that's Hudson Clement this year or Jayshon Platt could be. But on paper, it looks like this will be more evenly distributed. But I thought that going into last year too, and Beatty became an all Big Ten receiver.
Yeah, I would throw Braden Trimble in kind of that 15 to 20 catch range as well. I don't think that there's going to be such a gap. It is going to be more evenly distributed, because I don't think there's going to be a gap from 70 to 36 from your top 2 receptions guys this season. But I also don't know that 3 are going to hit 40, because I do think a quarterback finds his guy that he goes to and targets a lot when things start to get a little hot out there, and there's a safety blanket for a quarterback. Just naturally happens. Who that is, I would put my money on either Clement or Dixon, but we'll see how that plays out. But I do think you could have I don't know what, Jeremy, 55, a 40, and a 36 again. Like that feels about right. And then like Justin Bowick had 22 receptions last year. So there'll be a 20 some odd reception guy, and there'll probably be an 18. So it will be more evenly distributed. I don't think it's going to be 40-40-40 type. Like that's pretty significant distribution. And like I said, quarterbacks find comfort somewhere over the course of the season. But yeah, that is going to be a strength of what this offense can be, is just different playmakers around the, just spread throughout different positions, whether you said that's Caden Fagan or some of these wide receivers. Jayshon Platt, man, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where his reception total will be, but his speed lets me think that his yard total is going to be pretty good. I think he's got some pretty significant yard after the catch ability, but I also think Barry Lundy is going to dial some stuff up to get the ball in Jayshon Platt's hands.
That's my thing. If Jayshon Platt is as good as the buzz we keep hearing from every freaking coach on this team, like that's the guy who could lead this team in receptions, because he's in that slot. And you just get that little dump off that Hank Beatty got, and you see what he can do in space. Like the tunnel screen guy, like that would be Jayshon Platt most likely this year, though Colin Dixon, I think, can do that because he get yards after catch as well. But Platt is the guy who can take it to the house. Like Dixon's going to break some tackles and get you a 30-yard game potentially, but Platt could take it to the house. So it wouldn't shock me if Platt was that guy who ended up being the 50 plus catch guy, just because the plays that are schemed up, as I said, force fed for Fagan, some of those could be force fed for Jay-Sean Platt, and just came into my head like a screen pass to Caden Fagan. I guess one of the trips options just came into my head for a second. That'd be an interesting play.
Yeah, I think that would be a very interesting play. I can't wait to see how they use him. But yeah, Platt's speed is different. And, we'll see how they unlock that, because the last few years, outside of that Pat Bryant year where you just had to go to Pat Bryant because he was as good gets, that slot's been pretty productive.
Isaiah.
For Illinois, you go from Isaiah Williams, Hank Beatty was really productive. And quietly, even with Pat Bryant, Colin Dixon in the slot in 2024 had a nice year, especially relative to being, that was his second year. Was that his redshirt freshman year that he started in the slot with Pat Bryant? I think that's right.
Who's that?
Colin Dixon. Was that Dixon year? Yeah. Yeah. So that has been a productive part of this Illinois offense, is that slot. And really, like I said, Pat Bryant's kind of the outlier because he was as good as he was.
All right, let's get to the next one on the offensive line. Charlie, in my opinion, O-line has never been a strength of the Brett teams thus far. Why do you think this is, despite having NFL talent in the room? The first thing I would say is 2022's offensive line was pretty good. Pretty damn good. That was a Joe Moore Award semifinals. I think they deserved to be that. There's been sometimes I think Brett Bielema's offensive linemen get all Big Ten honorable mention because they're Brett Bielema offensive linemen. But that 2022 team was pretty good. I think 24, the offensive line was pretty solid. Last year, inconsistent. I think in the end, it was probably middling in the Big Ten. I don't think these offensive lines outside of 23 at times was bad. Right, early in the season was bad. They ended the season well. I don't think they've ever been bad for an entire season. The frustrating part, Joey, has been the inconsistency.
That's exactly what I wrote down. I think it's just not been consistent enough. And really, if you look at where the inconsistencies are, it's usually in those first 4 or 5 games where it's the most inconsistent. And then by the end of the year, like even that Citrus Bowl year, it wasn't very you think back to Eastern Michigan, they didn't run Central Michigan, was that the year? They didn't run the ball very well. And then they ended up playing very well down the stretch of the season and in the Citrus Bowl. So that's what they've got to unlock, is just more consistency with the offensive line. I think some of that's figuring out what scheme, in terms of how you pair the scheme with the bodies you have on the offensive line. They've gotten more athletic on the offensive line. This year, Christian Martin's a really, really good athlete. I think that matters, and you'll start to see that take shape a little bit more, rather than some of those massive maulers that you saw come to Illinois early on in the Bielema era. But you've just got to find consistency. And we say that, Jeremy, in a year that I'm expecting early inconsistencies from the offensive line, just given how many new faces they have out there.
Yeah, I think this is the area like you could accept that, right? It's like, oh yeah, you got 4 new offensive linemen, a lot of guys coming up a level. I would push back a little bit on this. Why do you think that is, despite having NFL talent in the room with Charlie? I mean, it's NFL talent because they developed it. I don't think Isaiah Adams, Josh Geske, and I know Josh Kreutz and JC Davis, like JC was maybe like PFF had him in the 200s, 300s potentially coming out of New Mexico. Melvin Priestley. I know some of these guys, Palczewski even, right? Some of these guys, Doug Kramer became an NFL draft pick, Valerian Lowe. These guys did not walk in the door as NFL prospects. They became that, which I think is a credit to Bart Miller and this offensive line. What has been frustrating is, despite the experience you had last year, despite, some talent that had proven itself at the Big Ten level, the beginning of the year was way too inconsistent. I think some of that had to do with them figuring out, what do they want to do on the offensive line? What are they on the offensive line? And Barry Lunny and Bart Miller kind of figuring that out. And I think it got better as the season went along. Wisconsin ate their lunch. That is for sure. Wisconsin started to do that late in the season to teams, but that was an embarrassing game. But otherwise, they played pretty well in November. So it's been the consistency part of it. But I don't think, like, Melvin Priestley's 6'3" as a tackle. JC Davis is going to play guard at the NFL. So, like, the Iowa offensive lines have been more talented, Joey. Like, Jennings Dunker came in as a 4-star prospect, right? Like, Logan Jones was a pretty good prospect. Tyler Linderbaum, like, they've had more talent up front. And that's where I think Illinois has to take that next step, is being bigger in the interior. And now you get Jake Renfro's a little bit bigger than Josh Kreutz. Down the line, I think your centers are going to be bigger, but also at tackle, getting more athletic and bigger. And they're starting to add guys like Champ Smith and Kai Pritchard, and Christian Martin has the tools. Now he has to prove himself. Micah Madalow and TJ Taylor have the tools. Now they got to prove himself at this level. So it's a big task for Bart Miller this year, but he does have, I think, as talented and as deep of a crew as he has. It's just young in him and really unproven.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And unproven in the Big Ten. There's some college production there, whether that be Christian Martin or some JUCO production. But this is the year that, to your point, you would accept a little bit more consistency. I think the offensive line has been, they have, full stop, they've underperformed at times early, especially early in the season during the Brett Bielema era. Like, I don't think, I'm not going to say otherwise on that, but it's also been a little bit of a hot button position. And I think because of what Brett Bielema's done in his college football coaching career, because of the way that they've run the ball at times with Brett Bielema as the head coach, especially at Wisconsin and Arkansas, I think there are these expectations for what the offensive line under Brett Bielema was going to be. Now, I would have thought
what he does is different though than what they did at Wisconsin.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so you're pairing that together. And I'm not trying to make excuses for the inconsistency. That especially with veteran groups that they've had the last couple of years, that was really disappointing to
Bart
see that inconsistency.
Bart will tell you that. Like, Bart knows it. They got to be more consistent. He's got to draw that out of these guys. The other thing I would say, Luke Altmaier had times where he did not get rid of the ball. Like, he owned some of those sacks. And I think Luke would tell you that. I think most of the offensive line could tell you that. So that was a weakness of his, I think, going into the NFL draft, was some of that, hey, I can't stand in the pocket this long. It's one thing they like about Katon Hauser is that he gets rid of the ball really, really quickly. So that could really help what is a developing offensive line. And I think adding Jake Renfro was really important, because all the great things about Josh Kreutz are the pre-snap, getting guys lined up, his intelligence. You hope Jake Renfro can bring those in a bigger body. And if he can stay healthy, I think that'd be big for them. Luke Altmaier's one of the greatest quarterbacks in Illinois. I think we've given him all the praise, but like, one of his weaknesses at times was he could hold on to that ball sometimes that would hurt his offensive line.
Yeah, and that happened especially early in his career. It got better this past season for sure, but early on, like, you think back to that game at Purdue, that the first year of Luke Altmaier, that strip sack and that ended up in a Purdue touchdown. Like, there's been moments.
Indiana ate up the offensive line, so they had a bad game. Luke took some bad ones early on in that game.
Yeah, that's right. And but I feel like the offensive line's been this kind of inflection point in the way that fans view this. And again, maybe it's because of who Brett Bielema's had on the offensive line at times in his career. You'd have liked to see, especially early on, some more recruiting wins on the offensive line and not have to tap into the transfer portal and the JUCO market as heavily as Illinois has had to in the last couple of years. But I don't think it's been as bad as people want to say it has been. I think the inconsistencies have been very maddening, though.
Yeah. It hasn't been a dominant group. It hasn't been a consistently bad group. It's been in the middle over the long term, but they've had really good moments and they've had some really bad moments. And that inconsistency has been frustrating. All right, as a White Sox fan, I am clearly a fan of Munetaka Murakami. He continues to smash the ball early in the spring, leading Major League Baseball in home runs. The other thing I loved about him was when he signed with the White Sox, he said, hey, why don't you have a bidet in the clubhouse here? And after trying out the Tushy bidet, I'm all about it. Murakami is right, because a Tushy bidet transforms your bathroom wellness for life. Gut to butt to bowl, soothe your bottom with instantly warm water that never runs cold. 99% of people who wash with Tushy warm water bidets feel cleaner and fresher after going to the bathroom. I installed this, guys. It took me about 15 minutes. I know nothing about plumbing. It was easy. Put it in my downstairs bathroom. Yes, that's where I go for my time when I go, and I feel clean. And that's why you got to try out this Tushy bidet. Instead of wiping endlessly with toilet paper, Tushy pristinely removes 99% of bacteria while protecting your natural skin barrier thanks to one natural ingredient. That's just fresh water. Installation is simple. Takes about 10-15 minutes to complete. Literally anyone, including me, can do it. So if you're not Team Tushy, you're not Team Clean, and for a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code Illini at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code Illini. Again, 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code Illini. All right, Charlie has another one. Do you predict Carson Boyd gets meaningful reps this season if Hauser remains healthy? That's where I struggle to align those two phrases. Meaningful reps for Carson Boyd, the backup quarterback, if Hauser remains healthy. That doesn't make any sense to me because if Hauser stays healthy, he's going to be in the games. Hopefully you can get him in against Southern Illinois. Carson Boyd, that'd be great if you get him in the fourth quarter. That's usually when Illinois would potentially put in its backup quarterback. I don't know how many passes he would be throwing at that point of a game. Hopefully you can get him in another game just because you're running away with it. But if Hauser is healthy, Boyd is not getting meaningful snaps in a significant game.
No, the only thing I can think is maybe by meaningful, you mean just in-game snaps? Then, yeah, I think there's opportunity. I mean, if not definitely against Southern Illinois, that has to be one of those opportunities. Maybe you get one against UAB late in that game. But otherwise, there's no reason to do that. There's just no world in which you would sit Caton Hauser in the third quarter of a game where the reps are still meaningful.
How much it's good to get in a game, take a snap, go through your progression, go through a handoff just to get that out of your system. This isn't going up against Ohio State or something. You know what I mean? Like, how much is that going to help him in 2027 when he's potentially? I think that's a little overrated. Like, it's nice to maybe get it out of your system that you're on the field, you go through that process, but I don't think anything really prepares you for lining up against Iowa's defense the next year.
No, look, this is a really well-intentioned question. I think if people want to see Carson Boyd throw the football. Like,
yeah, because UAB and Southern Illinois would be your chances. Are those meaningful? I don't know.
No, and you want to see it because he's probably the front runner for your starting quarterback in 2027. This always happens, right? There's always back, and no one's saying to do this in place of Caton Hauser. I don't think it's just you always want to see what can the backup do. What can the backup do? I just want to see what Caton Hauser can do because I think he can do some pretty good things in this offense.
And that's where the loss of the spring game, because that's the time to go see Carson Boyd and Michael Clayton rip the football around and probably make mistakes, right? And they get to see that every week in practice as well. All right, gluten-free Godfather. How is Illinois' relationship with the in-state players for 2028? Seems to be another loaded class. Anyone in particular stand out right now to you that Bielema and company are in tight with? Joey, it is another loaded in-state class. I still keep in touch with Tim O'Halloran, Edgy Tim, who's part of On 3 and Rivals right now. And he said it's a really good group. It's been a really good group the last couple of years. I think Illinois is starting to take advantage of the in-state group of 2027, even if they're not getting the 4-star prospects outside of Justin Johnson, who's a composite 4-star. I still think they're doing a pretty good job of recruiting this state. They've gotten in a lot of offers here early in the class of 2028. I think it's way too early to know who they're going to have the best chance at because it's really early in this process, and a lot of their offers, a lot of other people have offered as well. So I don't really have a great answer to this question because usually we find out in the fall who's visiting, right? Who's been here multiple times. Like most of these guys have visited. Tight end Jack McNamara out of Brother Rice. He's visited a couple times. He's also got offers from everybody in the country. Joseph Friedrich out of Carbondale, offensive tackle who's blown up this spring. Illinois, I think it was his first offer. He's now a top 50 prospect in the country. So are you going to be able to land that guy? I don't know. It's still really early. Ben Coleman, they just offered out of Providence Catholic. He's gotten offers from everybody in the Big Ten and most of the SEC, like Caleb Tucker, huge defensive lineman we got to see on campus last fall. Again, he's a top 200 prospect, has offers from everybody. So I still think it's way too early to know in that class, but it is another strong class, and Illinois has made a lot of in-state offers already, and that will continue, especially as they have their camps in June, where they get these guys on campus, especially those linemen.
Yeah, quarterback Matthew Lee also visited last year during a game. Cameron McGee is a top 15 prospect in the
Number
country.
3.
You know, Yeah, I think everybody knew that too for probably about a year and a half. There's going to be tough guys to land. So yeah, that usually becomes a lot more clear during the fall. And I mean to kick the question down the line. They're just really starting to build 2027 or kind of in the heart of not starting to, they're in the heart of building 2027. And usually it always feels so far away. And then, you find out all the 28s who are visiting during some of those games during the season.
Like last year at this time, these June camps, that's where they offered Soren Pfeiffer, right? Like Cameron Wagner became obviously more of a big time prospect as the summer went along, as he visited all these schools. So this is really when you start to see those offers go out. And then the fall, they offer a lot more of these guys, like some of these guys that had become 4-star prospects, like a couple of these defensive linemen from the state. Illinois hosted, and they didn't have any really offers, and now they're committing to Notre Dame and SEC schools. So junior year is a huge year for high school prospects. All right, next one. We got Sean. Does Khalil Valentine get 1,000 yards rushing this year? This is always a benchmark, right? Especially with Brett Bielema's history, 1,000-yard rushers. He's only had one at Illinois. But that benchmark has changed. I did a little research before we did this, Joey. How many Big Ten players do you think rushed for 1,000 yards last year?
4.
6. And 2 needed 16 games to do that. Both the Indiana guys, Hemby and Kalon Black. The year before, a lot, actually. 9 1,000-yard rushers. That was a loaded class. You had Caleb Johnson, Kyle Monungai, Jordan James, Woody Marks, Singleton, Allen, Judkins, Jonah Coleman. But in 2003 or 2023, only 2 guys rushed for 1,000 yards that year, Monungai and Blake Corum. Only 5 rushed for 1,000 yards in 2022. A great running back year. Mo Ibrahim, Chase Brown, Blake Corum, Braylon Allen, Nick Singleton. My whole point, Joey, it's really hard to do 1,000 yards because over the last 4 years, only 17 guys have rushed for 200-plus attempts in a single year. And usually it's going to take 180 to 200 attempts to get to that number. So that's my question. Does Khalil Valentine get 180-plus snap or rushes? Then he's got a chance. That's the question. Does he stay healthy enough? And does Aiden Lawfrey stay healthy enough where Valentine hits 200 carries around it?
I also just think that the way running backs are deployed is changing a lot. I mean, this by committee approach used to make it feel like, oh, you don't really have a lead back, so you're going to try 3 guys to make that up. And now it just feels like the way that it goes, it's better to preserve running backs in that way. So, like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to get to 1,000 yards. I don't know that he's going to have the carry opportunity to get there. I do think he's going to rush for the most yards by an Illinois running back since Chase Brown, passing his own 614 last season. Great fact.
Since Chase Brown, nobody's topped that.
So, like, yeah, I think that's on the table. I just don't – that's just not the way running backs are anymore unless you have that just absolute megastar running back. And that's NFL, that's college, whatever it looks like. It's evolved. It's changed a little bit. Now, for that to come true and for it to not 1,000 yards, you're right. One, I think Aiden Lawfrey has to stay healthy because the different punch that those two have, it's not quite your big body versus your speedster like we've seen Illinois kind of set up in the past, but they are different enough. And I think Brett Bielema, I think Barry Lunny, I think, Tyrone Wheatley, I think they're going to like that change of pace and just kind of a little bit difference. And you just want to keep those guys fresh, man, because when they're fresh, they can hit those speeds that we know that they have. And that's best for this Illinois offense.
Yeah, in 2022, Chase Brown got there. Well, he got there 2 years in a row under Brett Bielema. But one of the reasons he did is he was one of the only offensive playmakers on that team, right? I mean, at that time, like wide receiver wasn't very good. Obviously, tight end wasn't producing a lot. He was their go-to guy. So he got 350 carries, and that's probably not going to happen again. Now, is Khalil Valentine capable of getting 1,000 yards? Yes. That's why if you told me he got 180 carries, I think he'd get there because I think he can average 5.2, 5.3 yards per carry. But a lot also counts on the offensive line. A lot also counts on his health. But if Aiden Lawfrey stays healthy, I want that guy getting 120 carries because I think you're going to get 600 yards out of him. And again, keep Khalil Valentine fresh. And I think that helps your team in the long term. But I think his top end is, yes, Khalil Valentine can be a 1,000-yard rusher and be an all Big Ten running back and be in the NFL in 2027. But 1,000 yards is just hard to hit nowadays with the way people do things. And I don't think Brett Bielema cares about that number maybe as much as he probably used to when he kept having these guys over and over again.
Yeah, I think that part of it has evolved too. And it's just as your room gets deeper, right? Like that also wasn't, to your point with Chase Brown, outside of, the playmakers around him, it just wasn't the deepest room. So it had to be Chase Brown. He had to wear a lot of that workload. So yeah, the capabilities there, I just don't know that the opportunity needs to be there short of an injury.
All right, let's get to the next one. This is about Northwestern, though. Okay. Sean asks, if Northwestern struggles mightily this year and the schedule is brutal, is Braun on the hot seat, especially with the new stadium opening and Fitzgerald back coaching? This is a storyline I had going into last year, was like, do they want to go into a new stadium that I think is going to be awesome? Illinois fans and other Big Ten fans can give them crap for having a 40,000 seat venue. I think it's perfect. I think it's great. I think that's what Northwestern should be doing, as long as it's a great stadium, and it seems like it is going to be. But would they go in there with a guy who missed back-to-back bowl games, a guy who was put in as an interim coach after a phenomenal year? So we went 4-8 in year 2, but last year going 7-6, making a bowl game, winning the bowl game. He's 19-19, 11-16 in the Big Ten at Northwestern in the NIL age. I think he can coach defense a little bit. Now the question is, what do Chip Kelly and Aiden Childs add to that offense as the offensive coordinator and the quarterback? So that'll be the story of their season. But I don't know how much pressure is on him if he goes 3-9 this year. I think Northwestern's probably got to think about it. But who you hiring? That's the hard part. And I think David Braun's a really good defensive coach, and I think he can lead a program. It's just, what are your expectations for Northwestern in the NIL era? Because they have one super donor who decided to spend it on a stadium. Now, what can you get on that roster? But Aiden Childs and Chip Kelly obviously shows they have some resources.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know that Pat Fitzgerald being at Michigan State has a ton to do with what Northwestern will or won't do. I mean, sure, it would probably be a tough one if he goes and has immediate year 1 success and you're struggling. I mean, of course, that would be a challenge. I don't think you would make any decision based on that. And yeah, to your point, this is probably maybe a bigger deal last season because you're preparing to go into this new stadium. You want the right buzz. You want some energy going into that. I mean, I think just broadly, you can't bottom out in college football anymore. Like, no coach can get away with doing that. But also, I don't cover Northwestern. I don't know what they're going to do. I just don't to win more than, I would say, win more than 4 games, and you'll feel okay. But I don't know. You're right. The resources there, who you're going to hire. I think David Braun's a fine coach. Like, he's a guy that if they were to move on, he would land somewhere. Maybe not as a head coach right away. Some good program would scoop him up as a defensive coordinator in a hurry.
Yep. All right, Joey. Boys trips. Jay asks, if you were planning a boys trip reunion, which home game would you want to see? Don't want to ruin the vibes with a potential blowout against Oregon. What is your must-see home game and must-visit away game? I found this one hard because the schedule was really interesting this year, where like my favorite venues to go to in the Big Ten are not on the road trip docket this year. And the games I felt like were the best games for a boys trip to Champaign are late. Like, so the weather is a potential issue for Illinois this year.
That is exactly what I wrote down. No, okay. If you can stomach, like if you can get through a game against Oregon and a loss isn't going to derail your whole weekend, October 24th at Memorial Stadium sounds great. And
that's perfect.
Yes. And you're seeing a good team. Like, if you're the type of fan that is just going to absolutely wreck your whole weekend, yeah, maybe stay away from that. But if you're good to go,
if you upset that Oregon team, that'd be a memory forever, right? That you were actually
it's a party.
Actually there.
It's an absolute party.
Even if the odds 2% at a chance of winning.
Yes. So then you take that, let's take that away. So you're looking at, I think your next best option is November 21st against Iowa. I think that would be a very fun game. It's going to be cold. So where do you, you should have to figure out where you prioritize and rank some level of discomfort, whether that be emotional discomfort for a potential loss to Oregon or physical discomfort for being a little cold against Iowa. If you really want to check those boxes, I don't know how great of a game you're going to get. Maybe you just go on October 3rd against Purdue. You assume the weather is going to be good. You assume Illinois is going to win that game. You can probably drink enough beers and you'll be just fine. Have a good time, grill out a little bit. But I think that November 21st game against Iowa, if Oregon is just a non-starter for you, that would probably be my one.
Any of the non-conference games, if you enjoy warm weather, you could do that. I prefer football in the actual fall in the elements. So yeah, Purdue could be that. I think Nebraska would be great because I do think that's going to be a good game, except it's on a Friday night. And that might not be what people want. They'd rather have the Saturday part of it because then you can go to the game, you go to the bars afterwards and watch all the other games. I would probably pick Iowa just because I think that's going to be a huge game, fun game, a little bit of a rivalry. How about road game here, Joey? Our choices are Ohio State, September 26th, which is probably the best venue here, but don't know how much of a game it'll be. At Michigan State, October 10th. At Maryland, October 31st. At UCLA, November 14th. Or at Northwestern, November 28th.
Well, you and I like East Lansing, and I'm very excited to get a burrito there. And that's a good venue. I thought the stadium would have been there once. It was that 2019 comeback. That was fun. I mean, UCLA feels like it's a different vibe. It's an expensive trip. It's a different vibe. I would maybe lean towards Michigan State just because I know it a little bit. You can do it affordably. Maryland is fun too in its own because like you can kind of hit around
DC,
Maryland. You hit DC, and if that's your jam, I would say that. So I'll let you pick one of Michigan State or Maryland.
If you want the Big Ten feel, it's Michigan State out of this road schedule. Because Ohio State, I'm assuming you don't want to go and see Ohio State potentially dominate Illinois. Northwestern could be fun if Illinois wins that. It's a hat, it's a rivalry. You can make fun of Northwestern fans at the new stadium, right? Like if they were able to win that game, if they don't win, it's not going to be very fun. But I think Michigan State, October 10th, in the middle of the fall, playing against Fitz. It wouldn't be my go-to. Like if Iowa or Nebraska were on here, I'd tell you to go there. Those are two of my favorite places to go. I'd tell you if Minnesota was on the schedule on the road, go there. That's a fun city. I think it's a really underrated stadium, especially if you can get there in October when it's not ridiculously cold. I think Minnesota is a good environment. So it felt like slim pickings for this one because Maryland can be fun. UCLA can be fun because they're near these huge cities, but it doesn't feel like a Big Ten atmosphere compared to some of these other places. I think Michigan State fans will show up in year one of Fitz.
Yeah, I also think like Wisconsin would have been a runaway winner on this schedule. I lean towards Michigan State. Even though I had fun in DC, you made me walk 15 miles, and that was just brutal. But that was fun. We saw some cool stuff.
We might see some really cool stuff in this year. I got some other things in the works, potentially. Some big things we could potentially do in DC. So be on the lookout for that, Joe. All right. We got a couple more here. Lucas, what game this season in football do you think the team underperforms where clearly they are the better team? We've seen it happen before. I think he's thinking about Wisconsin last year.
Yeah, my first read of this was like, man, brutal. Where is the optimism here? But then if you look back, you've got Michigan State in 2022, which really cost you the Big Ten West. You could go Purdue.
Still would have been the game that mattered. Like that would have decided it. But yes, it was a really disappointing loss to a Michigan State team that was not very good. Caton Hauser on the sideline in that one, by the way.
You had Northwestern in 2023 miss a bowl game from that. You had Minnesota in 2024. You had Wisconsin last year. So like at first, my first reaction was, come on, man. And then my second actually, this is also just what happens in college football. But you can go through, like, there's one in every year for Illinois, and I couldn't.
For several teams over the last 4 or 5 years.
That's right. That's 100% right. I was somewhere in this 3-game stretch. I'm going to kind of walk through how I ended up where I was. At Maryland versus Nebraska, at UCLA. And I landed on at UCLA because you've now flown across the country in 14 days. You went to Maryland, came back, played Nebraska, and you go from Nebraska to UCLA. That is a lot of air. Like, if something is going to catch up, if that's your jam to believe in, like, man, the travel, being on the back end of Maryland, Nebraska, UCLA, that feels like that's a tough stretch. And we'll see, like UCLA has a good coach. We'll see they have a good quarterback. We'll see where that is. But that kind of feels like the game that could be, that's a disappointing one. Even though I will say most of those, three of those four had happened in Champaign, which would land me on Nebraska, but we'll stay with UCLA.
Yeah, I think that stretch is the right stretch of games. Like I still think Illinois will take care of Purdue at home. I just don't think Purdue's quite talented enough yet, but Illinois obviously going through a lot of changes. Duke without Darian Mensah, I feel better about that game. But yes, I think it's that stretch. And I've had UCLA as that game that I have circled. It's late in the season. You could be having injuries at that time, right? But I think Bob Chesney's a good coach. They'll kind of know what they are at that point. They'll be able to practice a lot. They have a good quarterback that can beat you. So that UCLA game I have circled as that one. All right. We got a few random questions that we had left over as we wrap this up. Michael, who is the next person after Keaton Wagner to get his name in the rafters? Is it Merck? I have a hot take.
This is the expectation for Brad Underwood. Like, do you realize how hard it is to get your name up there? And Brad Underwood's turned it out like it's the norm.
Like you get one every year. Yeah, they got 4 of them over the last 5 or 6 years. That is amazing. But I have a hot take on this one, Joey. I'm going to see if you go with me here. I think the next person to get their name in the rafters is a women's basketball player. I think it's either Barry Wallace or Ciara Parchment. Is that crazy to think that the most likely could be a women's player getting All-America honors over the next 2 or 3 years? Because as much as I love Merck, I mean, All-America status is hard to get. He could do it next year. It's certainly possible. But I think Barry and Ciara are kind of, I mean, their freshman years were just as good as Merck's, right? So and Barry's already an all Big Ten first team. If she takes another step as a 20-point a game scorer, if Ciara becomes a 18-10 kind of player, like they're kind of sitting there in All-America status. If Illinois can be a 3rd or 4th or 5th seed in the NCAA tournament and finish top 5 in the Big Ten, I think that's within the realm of possibilities.
I don't hate that take. I don't like. I like that. That's going to be tough to get because it's all so it's different, right? Because like for those two, I would say you're probably looking at like consistent All-America status. You can get up there for Big Ten Player of the Year too. That would be my best avenue for David Mirkovic. Would probably be Big Ten Player of the Year. Now I say that if you're the Big Ten Player of the Year, you're probably an All-American anyway. But like Marez Johnson staying in the draft, Braden Smith is gone. Adai Mara probably going to stay in the draft, right? So now Jeremy Fears is going to be the preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, I would have to imagine. But how far back is David Mirkovic on that?
He's top 5. Price Sanford is going to be in that discussion. Those guys are probably similar tier. I think Jeremy Fears Jr. will probably be the go-to guy for most voters, but David's going to get votes for that in the preseason. Now to win that, you're going to have to average 18-10, which he is plenty capable of doing. So he is the right answer. I kind of wanted to give a hot take with the women's because I think
I like that. I think
we're thinking about them as well.
Yeah, I like that take. And Parchment and Wallace are just really good players. And we should probably spend this offseason talking more about those two and how big it was for Shauna Green to retain those two, Destiny Jackson, and really the rest of her core. It's a fun take. I like that. I'm going to have to workshop that a little bit. I would also, if we're going to go on those takes, Kendall Bostic should probably be up there. Whatever way you can find, like she doesn't hit the criteria, and that sucks. But she's the leading rebounder in program history. She's 3rd in Big Ten history. She obviously had a huge mark on this program. She's not up there. I would have liked to see her up there, but I guess that's why you have the criteria in place, right?
Yep. All right. RPO the Jewels, our guy on Twitter. Are we getting LED lighting upgrades at Memorial Stadium too? What else do we know about game day changes this fall? Yeah, they've gone through a $29+ million renovation. They're supposed to have new wireless internet last year. Did that actually happen?
I don't think that happened. I do think it's on the way. I do know that LED lighting is on the way. So all of those night game touchdowns that you're watching and
Purdue action lighting kind of stuff.
And all of it. That's so funny. You get that stuff at Illinois. They're going to have a bunch of obviously the new video board is going to be enormous, and you can see the outline of that now at Memorial Stadium. There'll be a lot of new screens popping up around the stadium. As far as game day changes, I don't know that yet, other than just a lot of screens than the LED lighting.
Yeah, but they will have new LED lighting going on. RPO also wants to know what's a list of house projects Joey has. He wants to spam your timeline with instructions on how to do it. So we've talked about how we are not the handymen.
No,
everyone else is. So what do you got on the list?
There's not really a lot of major ones right now. There's stuff that's like we'll probably have to pay to have certain things done around here, but for the most part, I think we're in. I'm not a talented person in any capacity. We don't have a ton, which is nice right now to not have a laundry list of things you need done.
Jose, Larry Geese made the huge donation to U of I Athletics. Any updates on how much of the money has been spent and what is being used for? They do not give us that information.
No, you can look at the stadium. I think what they're doing at the stadium is a reflection of getting that money from Larry Geese, but there's no running tab of what of this $100 million has been spent and how it's been spent.
Yeah. And listen, we ask Josh Whitman all the time what is this money going for? Because our question is, does it go to the roster? And I don't think I don't know if, Larry wants it to be used that way or whatever, but this is a $100 million donation to the football program, right? And that just lifts all boats. And one of the biggest things of what they wanted about this donation was help get others on board and get their competitive juices going that, hey, this guy's doing this. Can you step up and do something similar? And we've seen some big donations, 8-figure donations, 7-figure donations coming in. But I would say $100 million. How far does that go anymore in college football? You need many of those. Northwestern's field, was it $800 million? Nebraska's renovation is going to be ridiculous. Penn State's is $700 million. It can go. And now football rosters, we're talking about $25 to $50 million a year. So you better be getting donations like this to help pay for a lot of the things, whether it's your field, your facilities, or your rosters. You better be doing this. But the Big Ten money certainly helps as well when you're making $70 to $90 million a year from the media rights deal.
Yeah, that goes a long way. Can I share one of my first interactions with Josh Whitman and how I had just no clue? It was one of the worst questions I probably ever asked, and I don't know that I've said it on here. Do you remember there was a media availability? I started on the beat in 2018 at Old Oven, where they kind of announced the renovations and the plans for a new oven. And Josh at that point did his presser. I think he was headed up to Chicago for a fundraising event, basically to try to get the ball rolling further or faster on donations for oven. And this is one of my first interactions with Josh, and I can't believe he ever speaks now to us, or to me rather. I said, well, how much do you need to come away with from this weekend to feel good about where you are? And he's like, Josh was very kind about it. It's that's not how this works. You don't leave there with wheelbarrows full of money. You're coming back to Champaign. Yeah. And it's I always think about that and how embarrassing that was. That was, I think, maybe my first question ever to Josh Whitman, and that was bad.
Hey.
So point being, fundraising takes on all different shapes and different ways, and it's not always earmarked publicly for how things are going to be used or how much is going this way or that way or what they're going to do. But now, obviously, when you start getting new video boards and stuff happening around the stadium, they're going to shout that from the rooftops because they want people to know.
Clay, in 5 years' time, what 5 Illini would you guess would be the biggest names at the pro level for their respective sport? All sports are available. Basketball, are you going Io, who's currently, I think, the biggest name in the NBA? Keaton Wagler, who'll be the highest drafted of all those guys. Will Riley, Kasper Siakishonis, Terrence Shannon. Who would you go with, Joey?
I think you got to go with Wagler because the expectations of a potential top 5 or top 6 pick are to be that guy. And in 5 years, Keaton Wagler in an NBA strength system in an NBA system, I like what that could look like. I don't know what that ceiling is in terms of just what his usage is going to be and all that, but you're a top 6 pick, that's probably how you should be thought of in terms of your, the big name type level that you are.
I would think the NBA is saying that too. I don't want to overlook like what he is right now is like a starting NBA player who makes an impact on an NBA team. He'll be 30, 31 at that time. He'll probably be one of the highest paid Illini in the NBA. I don't want to overlook that he would have a pretty high bar for these guys to clear. Like it's not easy to be better than that. And I think he's going to have a good career for the next 5-6 years. Will Riley's the other guy I would throw in that conversation just because the size, he's gotten way bigger, taller. He's shown he can score at this level. Is he ever going to be like an all-star caliber player? I don't know, but I think he's going to be in NBA rotation scoring points. So Will Riley's the other guy I would throw into there, but I'm with you. I'd have Keaton Wagner. Football, are we going away from Devin Witherspoon? I don't think we should.
No, it's Devin Witherspoon by a mile. Can we just say second place because we know Devin Witherspoon is first? Is second place Chase Brown?
I don't know. You've seen Kirby Joseph pick off a lot of passes, Joey.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Don't move away from him yet.
That's a good call. That is. I always forget about Kirby a little bit because he was just before that major wave. Yeah. No,
I forget Kirby with all his picks of Aaron Rodgers.
I chose to forget that.
No, but Spoon is already like tied for the second best NFL player in Illinois history, right? I mean, Dick Butkus, I don't know if anyone's ever going to top, but he already like matches the career accolades of Simeon Rice, which is amazing because Simeon Rice is like a borderline Hall of Famer. So what a start to his career, and he's going to get paid for it, and he's got a long peak here ahead of him, Joey.
Yeah, it's what he's done so far has been just remarkable. He's really very, very close to an enormous payday coming his way, and just one of the better, like we talk justifiably so about how awesome of a story Keaton Wagner is. Devin Witherspoon was before that on the other side of Kirby, and what he's turned into just insane. Shout out to Lovey and his staff for finding that talent, for getting him on campus, then for Brett Bielema and his staff for developing him into what he is. That was a coaching staff effort to get Devin Witherspoon where he is, and that has been just a remarkable story.
Big year for Johnny Newton. I'm interested to see what he does. I think he's definitely got a big role ahead of him this coming year with the Commanders. Women's basketball, you going Ciara or Barry? Because I think those are going to have two players that have a chance to play in WNBA.
Yeah, I just from like a mismatch standpoint, I like what Ciara can do at that 4 and her ability to handle and step out and shoot the 3. And she's still growing in her post game. Barry's so productive and so smooth, though. I mean, she is so much more known right now in terms of the basketball player she is. I think Parchment's mismatch ability could be something at the next level that might set her apart.
I'll go with Barry just because wings like that are skilled like that. I'll go with Barry, even though I love Ciara as a player. Golf, I don't think anyone's going to dethrone Thomas Dietrich and what he's doing. I think he's got 4 or 5 years ahead of him that he'll continue to do that. The other sport I picked was baseball. There's a couple guys who are at AAA. Jack Wenninger, he was a 6th-round pick. He's a AAA with the Mets, doing really well. Riley Gowens with the White Sox, the 9th-round pick. He did well at AA, not so much AAA so far. But since he's a White Sox, I'll go with Riley Gowens on that one. I think we covered them all here, Joey. No sport.
Yeah, there was one more I wanted to touch on real quick. Someone asked if Shauna Green is recruiting Liv Johnson, Lucas Johnson's daughter. They offered her last summer. She's a class of 2029 prospect. She just picked up Baylor and Michigan. She's already got Mizzou, Marquette, Iowa State, Arizona State. 6'1" combo guard. As a freshman at Carmel, averaged 17.4 points, 9.7 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 1.9 steals, shot 49% from the field, 39% from 3. She is going to have everybody recruiting her by the end of this, and that's starting to pick up now. I did catch up last summer with Lucas Johnson. He was obviously quite excited about his daughter getting an offer from Illinois. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy who's going to try to, direct it in that way. But yeah, she is a name to know in that, feels so long from now, right? But that those 28, 29 classes for Illinois women's basketball, because of how young they are and how many young players they have, those are going to be important classes. So just, keep her on the radar.
All right. Thanks everybody for sending in those questions. It was fun this week, kind of a slower week on the calendar to get you guys to take over the podcast. We appreciate all of you guys. We appreciate you listening. Follow us wherever you get us on the podcast. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, or hit the notifications bell. We'll get Joey on next week. We'll talk about the latest renovations at the new house. The newest ongoings at the new house. But everybody, have a great day. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.
Bye, everybody.